Hi, my name is Katie Sickman, Invasive Species Coordinator for the St. Croix River Association.
And I'm Jeremiah Walters, the Naturalist.
Today we'll be taking a kayak adventure out on the Apple River, which is a tributary to the St. Croix River, meaning it flows into the St. Croix.
So Katie, what are we going to be doing on the Apple River?
We're going to be looking at aquatic invasive species today. Aquatic invasive species are harmful to our natural resources, the economy, and recreational opportunities. That is why it's so important to learn about aquatic invasive species to protect the St. Croix National Scenic Riverway for generations to come.
So what do you say, Katie? Let's get on the river?
Sounds good.
So Katie, is there any aquatic invasive species that may just not always grow in the water?
I'm glad you asked, Jeremiah. Purple loosestrife is considered a riparian invasive species, meaning it likes to grow along shorelines of rivers, lakes, or in wetlands. The key thing is it likes wet soil, but it doesn't like to be immersed into the actual water.
Cool. That's great information, Katie. So what am I looking for when I think I find purple loosestrife?
Good question, Jeremiah. So one of the key things you're looking for is the color. So like in its name, it's going to be a purple to pinkish flower. It's going to have 5 to 6 petals. The stem that the flower grows on is going to be square. And those are good characteristics when you think you found purple loosestrife to look for.
Cool. Thanks for that, Katie.
Let's continue paddling.
I agree. Whoa! What was that just jumped out of the water?
Jeremiah, what do you think that was?
I don't know, but I don't think it was any of our native fish, such as walleye, sturgeon, or smallmouth bass.
Do you think it could have been something like this big head carp?
Very well could have been.
Although this isn't a real big head carp, carp do pose risk to our waterways.
So how can they be harmful to our waterways?
Good question, Jeremiah. Carp, more specifically silver carp, jump out of the water, causing threats to recreational boaters. They also are bottom feeders, which disrupt the soil, releasing nutrients into the water, which cause really icky algal blooms, causing not the greatest water quality.
So you said that's a big head carp, and you mentioned silver carp. Are there any other carp we should be aware of?
Good question. Yes, there are many different types of carp, but the most common ones in our St. Croix River watershed are these big head carp. Silver carp have been sighted in the lower river, and common carp are frequently found in lakes around the watershed. Black carp are a future threat to the St. Croix River. They're not located here yet, but if they continue to swim up the Mississippi River into the St. Croix, they will be harmful to our native mussel population.
Well, next time I go fishing, I'm going to keep my eye open for some carp.
Nice. Let's continue to look for some invasive species.
I'm down. Hey Katie, are there any aquatic invasive species that form dense mats?
Yes, good question. There's a lot of aquatic species that do form dense mats, but there are a couple that are considered invasive, including Eurasian water milfoil.
So where can I find it if I'm looking for it?
In a river, it likes to inhabit slow-moving waters, but in a lake, it can really grow anywhere, but you'll most likely see it along shorelines or on the end of your dock. So Eurasian water milfoil has something called whorls. These whorls have roughly 3 to 5 leaves. Each leaf has 12 or more leaflets. Something really important to know is that there's a native northern water milfoil. A way you can identify the native northern milfoil is by counting the leaflets on the leaf. If it has 12 or fewer leaflets, then you know it's native milfoil.
So how does Eurasian water milfoil even spread?
Good question, Jeremiah. Eurasian water milfoil spreads by something called fragmentation. This is when the plant breaks apart and either floats to a new location and establishes by current, or the fragment attaches to a boat and the boat transports it to a new location.
Is all aquatic vegetation bad for a lake or a river?
Actually, no. Most submerged aquatic plants are actually native and provide wonderful habitat for our native fish and wildlife. A few are invasive though, such as curly-leaf pondweed and Eurasian water milfoil, so it's really important that we keep an eye out for it so it doesn't outcompete our native species.
Thanks for teaching me about Eurasian water milfoil. You want to get back on the river?
Yep, let's go. I think I see something over there. Do you want to go check it out?
Yeah, we could go pull up our kayaks.
Great. Good eye, Jeremiah.
Thanks, Katie. This right here is a great example of an aquatic invasive plant. This is curly-leaf pondweed.
How can you tell?
Great question, Katie. We can tell it's curly-leaf pondweed by the lasagna-like leaves that are serrated on the edges, and the leaves themselves are about 1.5 inches to 3 inches long. So, Katie, how does this spread?
That's a great question. Curly-leaf pondweed spreads through fragmentation just like Eurasian water milfoil. Something unique about curly-leaf pondweed is it has something called a turion. A turion is a structure of the plant that buries itself in the soil and helps it survive over winter.
Let's go hop in the kayaks and look for some more aquatic invasive species.
Sounds good.
Katie, did you know that the St. Croix River is home to 41 native mussel species such as this? It's the most diverse in the world.
No way. Is that why we have such great water quality in the St. Croix?
You bet it is, at least one of the reasons.
Sweet.
However, there isn't an invasive mussel species that poses a risk to our native mussels and our water quality.
Tell me more.
So the invasive mussel that I was talking about is the zebra mussel. This invasive species comes to America from Europe and parts of Asia through big boats on the shipping industry on the Great Lakes.
Interesting. Jeremiah, could you tell me what they look like?
Of course, Katie. So these are typically small mussels. They have D-shaped shells. They're striped, like zebras, of course, and they have byssal threads, which allow them to attach to hard surfaces such as boats, docks, or even this native mussel.
Well, it looks like there's a bunch of little zebra mussels attached to that native mussel, and it looks like it's suffocating it. Could you tell me why else they're harmful to our environment?
Great observation, Katie. Yeah, as you can see, these zebra mussels are suffocating this native mussel, a good indicator that they outcompete against our native species. Their shells are also super sharp, so when they wash up on the beaches, they can cut our feet while we're trying to swim. And this was just a few ways that they can harm our environment.
So Jeremiah, what's an example of an invasive species that I could be looking at while I'm at a boat landing or along the lake or river shore?
That's a great question, Katie. One that I always look for is rusty crayfish.
Well, aren't crayfish good?
So not always. Rusty crayfish are a non-native invasive species from the Ohio River Basin that were brought to Minnesota and Wisconsin back in the 60s by people who used them as bait.
Interesting. So like bait, like when they would fish with it?
Exactly that. And then they would release them or they would come off the hook and then they just started reproducing and spreading.
Interesting. So how do you tell native crayfish from the rusty crayfish?
So on its side, you're looking for a brown or orangish spot, kind of like rust, and that's how it gets its name.
Interesting.
Well, Katie, it looks like our river adventure has come to an end. Thanks for sharing your information about aquatic invasive species with me.
And thank you for sharing what you know. Sometimes it's better to learn with a friend.
Absolutely.
Well, I hope you guys take what you learned about aquatic invasive species here today on your own adventure, but make sure you wear PFD if you're going out on the river or out on the lake. Stay safe and have fun.
Thanks for tagging along.
Bye.